This is Shadow Me Next with Johnnie Gilpen.
Gosh, I could imagine. I'm so glad that you made it to being a PA because all these things that you have done in the past just seem so incredibly interesting. I'm thinking to myself, how on earth did you ever leave that? I mean, even working as an EMS, I'm sure you have incredible stories as a first responder. Well, like working in the ER, some days it's not all TV. Some days the kids are coming in with a toenail half off, which is interesting to me. I work in derm, you know that. Like sniffles, and then other days of true emergencies. Working in EMS is the same. Before we get to that, though, really talking about a day in your life, and maybe we can talk a little bit about both. Working as a first responder and also now as a pediatric emergency medicine PA. Let's take a step back real quick and mention you've created programs, and we've talked about it a little bit, like the art of medicine and the art of struggle. Tell me what you've learned about resilience.
Yeah. So 3 years, it'll be 3 years ago next month, we lost 6 kids in about 3 weeks.
Oh,
That's one thing about it's like when Marines go down range, sometimes Marines don't come home. Sometimes kids come in the ER. We lost one yesterday. It just happens. And one day we had a kid that it was a bad deal. And one of my attendings, you're playing this back and forth in your head. Could you have done something better, worse, different? And 30 years in medicine, I've realized that sometimes no matter, you could be the best trauma surgeon, the best whatever, and there's a higher role power that there was something, the cards were already laid out. There was nothing you could do to change the outcome of that.
mm-hmm.
That's what I believe. And I was talking with my attending he had a son that was the same age as this kid. And at that time, I said, Doc, we did it right. You did it right. He's like, well, I said, and I made that same comment to him about, there's nothing we could do. And he said, how do you do it? And I said, do what? And he said, this. And he said, like, you've been doing this is my 28th year at that time. He said, you've been doing it like 20 something years. And I said, yeah. And he said, how do you still do it? And I said, well, I don't do it real well. I'll ask my wife. I deflected, I'm an absolute mess, which I am. And my wife is an amazing woman, and she puts up with me and doesn't strangle me in my sleep. But he looked at me and he said, you're still here. And that comment really bothered me. And so I thought on it a couple of weeks. I went back to him and I said, so his inference was, why am I not a statistic? I'm a veteran, first responder. I'm still a paramedic, still on the disaster response team. I told him, I said, I'm not any stronger than those people who have taken their lives. I'm probably less, but I said, there's a couple of things. One, my faith, I'm a very bad Baptist and a very poor Methodist. So I grew up Methodist. My wife has me going to a Baptist church, so I'm not very good. But my faith in God gets me through most days.
Mm-hmm.
I have a Rolodex of friends, which is what I told him. But I said, it's truly, I have a Rolodex of brothers and sisters, and most people these days don't know what a Rolodex is, but I have hundreds of friends that I can call that I've worked with, these relationships, this community that I have built, that I know that somebody's going to pick up the phone and they're going to be there to help me walk through this and carry me through this. And it's a reciprocal relationship. And then third is that when I lost 4 days before my 25th birthday, I lost 14 of good friends. And so when I was on active duty, and when I got back home, my dad was a Vietnam vet who had Agent Orange cancer, and he took me to a meeting with him, and he told me, he said, don't wait 30 years to discuss these things. Like, don't be like I do us, don't just keep it all bundled up. And so I've lived by that word, and I've learned these tools. So I've taken and really worked on these tools. And so he asked me to build him a class that he could teach them. And so if you can see that, there's the book. And so it ended up being 2 books when it split up. It went from a 2-hour class to an 8-hour class. And anyway, the program is it's not just based, it's mine, but it was originally based off of Eric Weimeyer, is the first blind guy to ever climb Mount Everest. And Jeff Evans, I don't know if you know who Jeff is. He's an emergency medicine PA.
Hmm.
He is a good friend. They're both good friends. Jeff was the guide who took Eric to the top. And so they have a program called No Barriers. Uh, and it's about getting people who have both physical and invisible wounds into the mountains and into nature. And they had started this program, and it's based off of Eric's comments and thoughts.
Mm.
And so they have a program for their warriors. And I said, I was climbing with Eric, and I said, Eric, I said, can I take your program that you've done and that you've done for veterans, and I want to take it to healthcare and take my twist on it? And he said, sure, do whatever you want to. So I taken Eric's comment for 7 things, his vision, rope teams things, his baseline, and I took it and expanded on it. And so that's where
Wow.
we're at today. But the difference between our program and most programs, I don't stand up and lecture to you.
Hmm.
The program is all about action. You're doing, it's a book. We put away all computers, all phones. You're actually handwriting. We're activating the reticular activation system. It's a different thing. We're talking about what I found is most people, whether you're a physician or PA, you've been focused so much on getting there that you don't necessarily develop those relationships. But we identify who's in your foxhole. And in the
Hmm.
military, we talk about your foxhole. That's your fighting position in life. And it's usually a 3-man foxhole is the best kind of foxhole to have, because one person could be on watch, one person can be resting, and the other person, can be doing maintenance. But and it goes back to King Solomon. King Solomon, let's see if I can find it here. King Solomon said in Ecclesiastes, a person standing alone can be attacked and defeated, but two can stand back to back, and three are even better, for a triple braided cord is not easily broken.
Hmm.
So whether you take an army manual or the Bible or whatever. So who are the two closest people to you, and who are the people you're going to call? Like,
Hmm.
we help them identify like two people that are in your foxhole, and not people who are going to just placate you, but who are going to call you out, who are going to be there. And then the other aspect is you have to be willing to do the same thing for them.
Mm.
So we give them tools, and that's the key thing, is about making sure whatever program it is not about just going through the computer, not about just doing it. Resiliency is about it's a it's a it's about doing it over and over and over again. Resiliency is that rocky moments in our life.
Hmm. Hmm.
Sorry.
I, it's perfect. It's perfect. And I'm glad that you said it's about doing it over and over and over again, because I don't think anybody gets to the other side of these challenges and goes, woof, there we go. Check the box. I've developed resiliency. It's something that you just see and see again. And eventually you realize, okay, like this is forming that tool. This is forming that strength. And the relational aspect of this, the fact that you encourage people to form these relationships, of coming from somebody who has been in situations where it would be very difficult to speak about some of the things that you've seen and done with other people. And the fact that you have these friendships, these relationships where they know if you're calling, it probably means it's going to be something tough. Um, that's life changing. If you're interested in learning more about the art of medicine or any of the other incredible resources that Johnnie has to offer, they're available at johnnygilpen.com. That's JOHNNIEGILPEN.com. Johnnie, you're amazing. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for sharing it with all of us. We appreciate it.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me here.